It's Decision Monday as federal government is set to take a final stand on the minimum wage issue.
Labour is pushing for 30,000 naira minimum wage, while the federal government says 24,000 naira is a more realistic figure. But state governors, however, who are finding it difficult to pay the 18,000 naira, say they do not have adequate resources to meet Labour's demands.
They're insisting on 20,000 naira. That's a far cry from what Labour wants. But a crucial stakeholders meeting bid for today is expected to lay to rest all divergent views on the minimum wage figure.
But if no agreement is reached, organised Labour may go ahead with its planned strike scheduled to commence on November the 6th.
We have in the studio with us President of the United Labour Congress, Joe Ajero. Good morning and thank you for coming.
Morning.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So the federal government plans to meet today with state governors, and of course we're going to take a break from politics and talk about the minimum wage. Are you optimistic that they're going to come up with a favorable figure this time?
Well, in the first instance, I doubt it because the meeting is a meeting of one leg. In industrial relations, in Nigerian industrial relations practice, you have a tripod: labor, employers, and the regulators, and government. Okay. Incidentally, government is both employer and the regulator. That's why we're having the problem we're having. So whether it's governors, whether it's the private sector, whether it's federal government meeting, it's a meeting of the same group. Okay. So it's not a meeting of stakeholders where issues are harmonized. And I want to correct an issue. Labour is not pushing for 30,000. 30,000 is an agreed amount by all the parties.
That's highly debatable.
Exactly, because the minister has come out to say that he never agreed to that amount, which organised Labour has been saying that.
I am saying that it is a lie.
Okay.
Lie.
How did he lie? How did the minister lie?
Well, fine. You see, the practice of tripartite negotiation on minimum wage has been on from inception. This is not the first time. Now, this meeting has taken place for almost 8 months. You don't sign every day. There's a document prepared to be forwarded to Mr. President after this 8 or 9 months negotiation. And part of that document, some members have signed, and a clean copy is to be produced. On none of these days did people sign after meeting. And then the issue of 24 that government is proposing and 20 that the state governors are proposing is the demand they brought on the first day of negotiation. And you remember that there was a 2-day strike that made them to reconvene the committee to conclude. So if they are not telling you that they went back that day and they proposed 20,000, 24,000, is lie.
But at what point did the minister representing the federal government of Nigeria go into agreement with organised labour on the figure you're saying?
Well, the minister was even the chairman of the subcommittee that came up with about 4 scenarios. Okay. When this problem came up on the last day of negotiation, and 30,000 wasn't even part of the scenario. 35, 37, 38, something. And then it was even NECA, not the minister, that said, please take 30, despite all this scenario, because our businesses
That's the private sector.
Yes.
Okay.
Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, because our businesses are suffering. You know, there is no energy, nothing. You know, say take 30, which I beg. And the motion came at the floor, and I want minister to come out. I want the chairman of the committee that was set up by the president. Of course, he has sent his report on this 30,000. You know, to Mr. President. Let him come up and say it. For the minister to come out.
The same NECA was quoted to have said that although that was the popular decision, the federal government, who happens to be an employer, signified its exception to that resolve. Yeah. Did you also witness that?
Well, if you say signified its exception, when there was a consensus, I want you to get this.
No, because
the employee, there was a consensus. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if there was a motion in a meeting and you were there, the federal government had more representatives, no counter motion, no objection. It was adopted, signed, and people started signing for a signature page, and the date was fixed to carry it to Mr. President. And you okay, let me tell you this. It's better I draw your attention back that for the minister to adjourn that meeting, saying he died before the strike, shows that federal government was not negotiating in good faith. 2, for the federal government not to add minimum wage payment in the 2018 budget shows that they never intended to pay anything. They were bidding time. So I wouldn't be surprised.
But they made a promise anyway that if eventually a new minimum wage got passed, that of course there'll be a
yeah, of course they will not allow it to be passed.
Oh, okay. Well, you're saying that
yes.
now, but we've seen efforts.
Because today's outcome, or the outcome of today's meeting is already known.
How do you say? What's the outcome?
Well, because if the governors have said they can't pay, and the president said they can't pay, so why are they meeting? Now, if governors were not able to pay 18,000, as you are saying, why are they proposing 20,000?
It's all right. There are some who would say that there's nothing wrong in consistently reviewing how much a worker receives, but it's also very expedient to acquaint oneself with the ability of the employer to pay. As we speak right now, close to 18 states are still battling with the reality of the 18,000 naira. Is Labour concerned about that at all? Because on one side, there have been suggestions of cut down on government expenses, limit the number of aides for governors. But there are others who are saying there are also many workers who are not as productive. That if government is going to review this amount, it's also going to affect many civil servants who are just, enjoying welfareism from government.
Well, I'm not sure there's any welfareism from government. Now, let me clear this. The last minimum wage was 2010, 2011.
That's right.
It was due for review in 2016. Ordinarily, as for arrears from 2016. And between that time and now, there has been increase. Inflation has moved up. The exchange rate of the dollar more than 100%. Now, the increase in pump price of petroleum products at the meeting of the palliative committee, that was where the issue of this committee to review wages came up. And it was clear as part of the palliative that workers' wages, must be reviewed clearly. And when you put all these things together, you start to ask yourself, where are they talking of ability to pay? If you are selling fuel for 97,
okay,
and suddenly you are selling for 145, now you are telling me that is no revenue. There are other areas that revenue seem to be coming in. The wastages you mentioned are there. And now in the 18 states you are talking of, the governors are not owed. Their aides are not owed. The commissioners are not owed salary. Why is it that is the worker, that is earning 18,000?
Okay, that's an argument, really. But some experts have said that organized labor, generally, it's not even pushing for what it's supposed to push for. That it shouldn't be about minimum wage increments. That should be the focus of organized labor. That should be about the demand for social amenities to be put in place, because regardless of any amount set right now, even if it's as high as 100,000 naira per month, that inflationary measures and other economic factors would still make that money not valuable enough to bring succor to the worker.
Well, we don't take the issue of organized labor in isolation. We are in this country when people say that lecturers are teaching what they are not paid to teach. Here. Sure. Now, it's like organized labor is reduced to the issue of the welfare of the workers. Now, when you drag this further, you discover that separately, either as individual unions or general workers' welfare, we have fought those aspects. Let me take privatization, for instance. I'm synonymous with the fight against privatization of electricity. And Nigeria said, let it be. Because they want the market forces to determine what we are doing. Now, that area has been privatized. Will you complain tomorrow that they are charging you 1 million naira per month? Because it has gone to the market. Now, when workers are fighting for the interests of Nigerians, some of them seem not to be a bit equipped. Now, you have no transportation, no free education, no medical, no Medicare, and then all these things will revolve around 30,000. 30,000, for instance, is less than 1,000 a day.
Exactly what Asisat was saying, that these indices you have mentioned appear to be more important than how much the worker earns, because it boils down to the
but
value.
Nigeria doesn't run a welfare state. Nigeria's government is not all about the interests of the
For instance, why is
the market?
Why are workers not talking about the quality of education in our public schools? If, for instance,
how many times have they that have ASU, because ASU is a union, in the tertiary institution, how many times have they been on strike on this same issue?
Most of the times it's
That's
also
what-
been
that's
about
what I'm
how much
So,
they earn.
Some of them, no.
How much they
No,
earn.
they talk
That
about
has
the
been-
quality of education. Even the students as of today are talking of the budget allocation to education. As at today.
Well, they usually talk about, yes, the quality of education, amount for research, but somehow the clamor for that died down.
It should not be limited to the teachers and the
demand
students.
that was louder
because
was
you
for
and I,
their
who have
personal
kids,
welfare.
you know, we are affected by the quality of education, all of us. But when they are agitated, some of us will be saying, oh, these teachers. And it ends there.
Jerry, you know that the bottom line here is that if, for instance, if the quality of education in our public schools, you know, are top notch, workers won't be under unnecessary pressure to send their children to private schools and all of that. But help us understand how this minimum wage works, because we discussed this last week, and someone was saying that an increase in minimum wage does not necessarily translate in a general increase in the amount that the average worker earns, especially those who already earn above the minimum
Senior
wage.
workers.
How does it work really?
Well, I don't think the person is telling you the truth. If we go into the issue of cost of living index, the fact that you're earning 50,000 doesn't mean that inflation had not affected you. It doesn't mean that the gari you were buying 20 naira before
No,
is still
I'm
No,
not
no, no,
sure.
no. It's
I'm not
talking-
sure you got my
Yes.
question. Someone who is earning 50,000, for instance, after this minimum wage has been increased, will he also enjoy some increase in his pay?
Definitely. Minimum wage is all about getting a platform for negotiation. Now, before it was 18,000. Today it's 30,000. Now, somebody was earning 30,000 before. He can't be constant. And you need to, at that percent. Now, what happens is that in graduating it, as you get up, if it is 100%, you may not make it 100%. Top up there, it may land at either 70% or 60%, as the case may be.
But
That's the graduation.
some government
But
workers
to
are
say-
already complaining. Those 11, 8, 9, 10 are saying that they may not even get as much as
that's
2,000 naira on their own.
No. That's exactly what I'm telling you.
salaries.
Is the graduation. You know, it's not like it's lateral if it's 100% across board. That might be the point the person is making. But it doesn't mean that you remain where you are. If you remain where you are, people who are junior to you will still meet you.
Comrade, are you concerned about the fact that the Nigerian economy cannot afford a national strike at such a time like this? Because you were pessimistic about the meeting that has not even held. Is the labor union concerned about Nigeria's economy at such a time like this?
What is wrong with Nigerian economy?
You already, observed the fact that some governors cannot pay salary, and now you're asking workers to down tools.
Why can't they pay salary? See, minimum wage 18,000 came into force 2010, 2011, and they were paying salary. At the eve of 2015 election, they shifted money for the election. That was where the issue of arrears came. Now, if they were paying in 2011, 2012, 2013, and suddenly they cannot pay salaries again, there is need for you to find out why they can't pay salaries. So if their priority is different, they can't come up generally to say that they can't pay salaries. Because even if you put it at 5,000 a month, they will not pay.
Now, the Minister of Labour, Ngige, said that it's not even possible and not even professionally right, really, for the employee to dictate his
What the
salary,
employer pays.
for the employer. It's not a job of the employee to demand for a particular amount, so long as an agreement met. And seems that it is what the organized labour is doing, demanding emphatically that
does
you want
that
30,000
does that
naira
show that
minimum
he
wage.
is alive to his responsibilities? When you are talking of negotiating and you are saying somebody can't demand. Now, why did he set up a tripartite committee? Why can't he
dictate?
Yes, why? No, it's not. All that is happening is not about dictating. If you are dictating, there's no negotiation. You will say, you must pay me this. But if you are negotiating, and you have, some of us ask for 96, and they say it is this, and we are coming to terms with it, how will somebody call that dictating?
Okay, so but now that the federal government is meeting, and you are saying that you are not even hopeful that anything
No, by
positive
evening today,
would come out of it.
By evening today,
You
my
think-
prophecy will come.
Okay, so you think, so in essence, you think that the way to move forward now is to go on strike.
going on
And
strike.
how confident are you that it's going to be effective? Because the last warning strike called by organized labor, according to many Nigerians, wasn't really that effective.
When was that strike called? The strike was called to to make them reconvene the committee. And within the second day, they call for the reconvention of the
What
committee.
she's saying is that
Now,
your officials had to literally go to some institutions to enforce the industrial
No,
action.
of course.
It appears like Nigerians are even tired of,
No,
of
of
going on
course,
strike.
there is strike enforcement. You can't call strike and say.
What I'm saying is that you didn't
Nigerians
seem to
were-
enjoy
See,
solidarity
were asking themselves
with
if
the
there,
workforce.
if there was a strike.
See, let me tell you this. The strike achieved its aim, which is reconvene the committee
Okay.
to conclude this assignment.
So it achieved its purpose.
Yeah, it achieved
Okay.
its purpose.
All right.
It wasn't meant to, stop Nigerians from going out. It wasn't. Now, if you are talking of the effectiveness of strike, and you have said Nigerian economy can't survive strike, and then you are saying a strike is not effective, I think there is need for us to balance this.
Another issue that has become prominent is the reference of the Minister of Labour to the Trade Dispute Act of 2004, which clearly spelled out that if you're going to go on strike, then forget about being paid.
Okay.
In fact, someone described last week that during the days of your action, of your industrial action, you can't even, count that as your days in service.
Okay.
What are your reactions
Well,
to this?
the right to strike is a right that you can't take away from any worker. That I should wake up today and say I will not work is not the right of a worker, of a management to determine. Besides, the law of no work, no pay goes with no pay, no work.
By International Labour Organization.
Now,
Okay.
if you are now talking of 18 states not paying, why has that law not invoked on them? Because if labor is talking of pay us minimum wage, and you are now remembering an obsolete law, and let me tell you in this country,
So the fact that-
obsolete laws
The
and
fact
bad
that-
laws are not to pay.
Comrade, the fact that some state governments have not paid, does that automatically nullifies the effect of this law? Of
No,
work,
the
no
law has been there. You quoted 2004.
4.
That law can't be.
But I
enforced.
just brought back the white paper on that. On
I
that
say
rule
that
of
law,
engagement.
those bad laws, and there are many of them like that in the country, they can't be enforced.
Wow.
You are saying, wait, you are
Joe,
saying
Nigeria is signatory to the ILO treaty,
which
like we said. that-
ILO cannot approve
Yes,
this law.
but then who is going to implement the law? Who is going to enforce it? And who is in charge of the purse? It's the federal government of Nigeria and the state
How would
governments
they,
in their
how would
respective
they implement
states.
it? How do you implement it?
Because it's not
when
the
you
first time Nigeria is not sticking to signatures
work,
on
no
any
pay.
world agreement.
Say, fine, no work, no pay.
Okay.
It has to be general. You go on recess for 75 days, you're a parliamentarian, no work, no pay. You go on medical leave for over 100 days, no work, no pay. It is the worker. that
Has
you are
the
telling
organized
no-
labor even tested this rule, the rule of engagement in law, in court,
Which rule of engagement?
of no work, no pay?
No, it's one of those distractions
tested it
we
in
have
law?
lived with. Wait, let's get this.
Okay.
It's one of those distractions we have lived with. If you watch any time labor is on strike, you hear any of the ministers, they will tell you no work, no pay. So it's a constant distraction all these years.
That's
And
what
we
I'm
think
saying,
about it.
because most of the time, people don't test the law. Have you gone to court to
It's not for us
for
to
clarity,
test the onus of...
so that the government doesn't
See,
use it anymore?
Wait, the government has never used it, and we are waiting for them to use it. You see, in industrial relation, there's
So
balance.
you're saying at
there's-
every
there's-
time
there's
you had gone on
balance of power.
strike, government had paid you.
Of course, if government is the reason, if the costs are going on strike, why wouldn't they be responsible?
It's all right. So Labour has declared a day of national outrage and mourning, which will be used to sensitize Nigerians on the plight of workers. That's expected to take place tomorrow. Are you still optimistic, or let me use the word pessimistic, that the meeting today is not going to change, the line up of events for Labour?
Well, normally, with the chairman of the committee sending the report to Mr. President, we expect them to do the needful. But when a government starts to preempt a meeting to say we can't do this, we can't do that, it gives you cause to worry. If there were no such comments, the states can't pay, the federal can't pay, and they are meeting today, the optimism would have been so high.
Is Labour ready to reach a compromise? What if government says, okay, let's bring it up a little, but not 30?
Well, you see, there is no amount that will be fixed outside the tripartite committee now. There's no amount. In terms of minimum wage, if Mr. President decides to give us an award, of course there was an Udoji award and other awards in this country. If he decides to give us an award of any amount, that's an award. but the minimum wage must be negotiated
set at 30
by the tripartite committee.
Okay, since the commencement of the the meeting of the tripartite committee, governors had been shouting, lamenting and demanding, pleading that the government should give them the prerogative to set their own minimum wage as they deemed fit. But nobody listened to them. They were saying that, and many experts have come out to say the same thing, because these states do not have the same economic powers when it comes to generating IGR. You can't compare a state, Lagos, for example, to so many states in the country.
What you are saying is not new to what we are doing. About 6 states were represented at the tripartite committee. They represent the governors. This negotiation going on is with the governors forum intact, 6 governors. Now, the question is, has minimum wage been a wage for states? It is a national minimum wage that the states must fall in. Now, as of today, it is not 18,000 that most of the states are paying. What you do is to state the minimum and the governor. And if you don't do that, you are destroying the basis for a federation. At 18,000, Edo State is paying 25,000 today. All this one they are banning.
Lagos is also paying more than.
Lagos is paying more than that. So when you set a minimum standard, the governors go back. But you must protect the citizenry by saying you can't pay less than 1,000 or 2,000, or else some people will not even pay.
I'm wondering now if Labour has engaged with some of these governors who have difficulties with paying to understand what the plights really are.
Well, state by state, as these issues arise, the unions that fall within those areas, engage the governors. Some of them are clearly stubborn. Some have other priority they are facing. So that is why the problem continues year in. Some others, like Gombe, will tell you if you approve 50, will pay. And you start to look at their IGR.
Delta governor too?
Yes. You start to look at, is it that they are collecting more money than some of these states? It's a matter of priority.
Okay.
And if you want to ignite this economy, you pay a living wage.
All right. Now, there's the issue of a bloated workforce on one side, and then the productivity of the Nigerian workers. Many of them, like, for example, 10 people are doing one job. If you go to many offices right now, of course, you'll see what I mean. I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say.
Well, if the civil service is over bloated, the political office holders must be responsible.
Okay.
It's your duty. You have an oversight function to know how many people are working in Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education. It's part of your. So if you now, instead of 5 people, you have 10 people there. So why are you complaining?
But Labour has always been defensive.
Secondly,
Labour has always been defensive.
No, Labour has never accommodated.
When government makes attempts. In Kaduna, for instance, the governor conducted a test for teachers. And you know the kind of controversies that...
What test?
That was competency
test.
That test was
in Edo State, there was a teacher who could not read her own affidavit.
That test was not meant to determine the workforce. It was meant for promotion. Now, let me tell you, if you don't give a worker equipment to work with, if you don't do retraining of a worker, if you don't retrain a worker and you expect him to perform with modern techniques, I think you are not. There must be upskilling, there must be retooling of any worker, and a worker has worked for 20 years or 30 years on the same grade, no training, no new skill, by the employer, and you expect him to perform magic. I think that's not.
So in essence, the blame
that should not be the basis to determine his employment, because you have a contract of employment.
So
but it can determine whether he's promoted or not.
I'm saying, in essence, you're saying that the blame is still on the government if the Nigerian workers are not even productive.
Well, the issue of productivity is relative, like I was trying to explain to you.
Because we've never had Labour go on strike on the productivity of workers.
No, who determines it? The employer. There must be.
I want
to get your opinion on that. You're saying it's relative. Why is it relative?
The issue of
that it
productivity is relative.
Okay, how?
This is the job I'm given, to carry 2 files in a day. If I can't carry 2 files in a day, I'm not productive. Now, if you duplicate my work, you award contract to your political associates that they will not be carrying file. Now, you can't turn back to accuse me of being unproductive. Now, let me tell you part of the reason why some of them can't pay. Because they have outsourced and contracted out job meant for the public sector. The public service is not working. That's the problem. Besides, a governor has no business awarding contract for road construction when there's a Ministry of Works. You know that. Water resources, our taps are not working. And they are awarding contracts. So if you duplicate the work, when there are engineers in the Ministry of Work, you give their work to a contractor.
And he asked just earlier that why are workers not just organized labor now, but workers going out armors to protest that you are not making us productive, you are giving out our jobs to private hands.
But are they not paying them? Are they not paying them?
So
salary?
Meaning that they are contented with being paid.
You
but
must
now they are demanding to get more money for doing nothing.
Part of the job now you are giving them, job schedule, is that you don't construct road. Stay in the office. Now I'm coming back to the issue of productivity. Now since you have given me a target of staying in the office, you won't turn back to say I'm not productive.
It's all right, Joe
Ajero, President of United Labour Congress, thank you very much for your analysis. We'll wait to see what the government is going to decide.
It's important to note, as is that the fact that it's symbiotic. As much as workers want more money, productivity on the part of workers will determine how much money government have at the end of the day.
Absolutely, but then we will talk about if governors are saying that they cannot pay, the government is paying its own people as well, so the workers deserve to get paid. Anyway, now